Hello, this is Craig Mearns, Director of Product Education for Inktovo, the parent company of GraphicsFlow. Inksoft and Printavo, welcome to the webcast today. This is part of our Graphics Academy series for our GraphicsFlow members. What we're going to talk about today is kind of getting in the right mindset for back to school season. And we're in it. You know, it is, the kids are going back to school, the fall sports are starting up. And what we want to do ultimately is maximize our sales opportunity during that season. And I'm not saying it's too late to get involved, but especially when you're talking about sports and fall sports activities, generally speaking, they start kind of looking at things in, let's say May, June. The teachers are off during the summer unless you're working, year-round environment. But decisions are actually being made right now, so it's not too late to get involved in that. But we also want to set ourselves up for reorders and making sure that, we've got our proverbial ducks in a row so that we don't miss out on any sales opportunities. And one of the things I'll just say real quick about, that part of the world, whether you're doing the schools, teams, and sports, or you're focused primarily in corporate, there's always low-hanging fruit that's available to you that doesn't involve you having to bid with a high school or, work on a PO process. There's people in your community. Let's say you're working with from a small local business and you're embroidering their uniforms. There's nothing preventing you from asking the business owner, says, hey, are your kids involved in any school stuff? Oh yeah. I'm actually the booster parent for the high school band. Oh, wow. Do you guys do merchandise? Yeah, we do. Who's doing your merch for us? He says, oh, we're really not that happy with our current vendor. I says, I do all that stuff too. Wow. I never really thought of you for doing that. And if you don't let people know that you can offer those kind of services, they're not psychic, right? So they're not going to necessarily know that you can service them in that way too. So we're not asking you to be the local powerhouse for schools, teams, and sports. What we're asking you to do is reach out and grab some of that low-hanging fruit, because that can pad your sales and become what we like to call plus business. So it's on top of what we're already doing. And the great part about that kind of business, it's an annuity. So it's something that is repeatable. There's reorders, and you can repeat that same process every year. And one of the things that can work to your advantage is a buyer changeover. And I know this firsthand for being a sales rep in the decorated apparel industry, specifically for college bookstores and collegiate apparel, is buyer changeovers can work in your favor and they can work against you. When they work in your favor is that you were shut out because the old buyer wouldn't give you the time of day because they were chummy with, previous sales network or previous supplier. New buyer comes in, and where it's really great is when the new buyer is promoted from within the organization, and maybe they were a little resentful of the previous buyer, and they basically start looking at all new vendors because they weren't really thrilled with the super close, tight relationships the previous buyer had with their current vendors, and they just want to open their minds up and requote everything and see what else is out there. That can really work to your advantage, and that was definitely one of my kind of windfall situations when I was a manufacturer's rep. So, treat everybody with respect within an organization, because you never know when they're going to get promoted in a position that is going to be beneficial to you. And also it's just being a good human being, right? So let's get into the little slide deck. I'm going to turn off my mug here, and we're going to focus on the deck. And I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the basics of that market. And the first thing I want to talk about is, it's a huge market. So in terms of the decorated apparel side of the business, the team, school, and sports is probably the largest market segment. And that's due to the fact there's tens of thousands of schools in our country, US and Canada, if you include, North America as a whole. And also just think of the number of kids and young people that are involved in sports, not to mention adults. And with, we have a uniquely North American outlook, which is we're highly competitive, and we really like to support our kids. As a, I could say I'm still a coach, but as a former coach, I've certainly been exposed to parents that are quite enthusiastic over their kids' involvement in sports. And you can certainly leverage that as a way to sell more merchandise. If you have those areas of the country, like we'll just take, for instance, Texas, where high school football is practically a religion, that is certainly leveraged into opportunities to sell merchandise into that market. And I think that's pretty universal across the United States and Canada. And obviously there's, regional differences in terms of, the level of enthusiasm. As somebody that grew up in North Dakota, pretty much, hockey and hockey and high school football were kind of the two big things, and actually basketball to a certain degree, because basketball is a great sport to play in the middle of winter when it's 35 below outside. So, being able to leverage, whatever that, popular, activity is within your community is great. And then there's all these up and coming types of sports and activities and things that you're seeing. For instance, lacrosse is rapidly growing. Pickleball has absolutely exploded. And then you have, some of your leisure sports, which are things like cornhole and even things like darts and bowling. And I don't know if it's fair to call them leisure sports. But I say anything you can do sports-wise while holding a beer, in my opinion, is a leisure sport. So I watched the Johnson Bratwurst Cornhole Nationals, and the players are drinking a beer. This is a professional sport. They're drinking a beer with their left hand and pitching the cornhole backs with their right hand. It's pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit about, the level of competition in this world, because it is a very competitive marketplace. And frankly, that can be very discouraging. And what I mean by that is, we're human beings, right? So feelings can get hurt. And let me give you a good example of a feeling being hurt from my own personal experience is, when I was a, manufacturer's rep and I was selling collegiate apparel into college bookstores, I was dealing with some pretty high level organizations. I'm dealing with the U.S. Olympic Committee, the United States Air Force Academy Visitor Center, GART Sports, which is eventually, acquired by Dick's Sporting Goods, which is the big, regional sporting goods stores in Colorado and Wyoming. So I was dealing with some pretty big organizations. But there was one account that I really wanted to get into that was personally very important to me, and that was the University of Colorado Athletic Department. And believe me, that is not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so I had an in there through the bookstore to a certain degree, where they made the introduction to me to the new basketball coach. They hired a new basketball coach. Everybody was really excited about the basketball coach. And we did some basketball designs in the bookstore. And it was our world famous hoop and net design, which if you're a GraphicsFlow member, you actually have that clip art from our world famous hoop and net design. And so we did these great looking basketball shirts, and the basketball coach was like, he came in the bookstore and says, I love this. Could we do these for the players? And at the time we had a really high quality, what we call a pro style t-shirt, which was modeled after the Champion 77 QS. In fact, it was made in the same factory that Champion had closed in Casa Grande, Arizona. And so I did these shirts, but you know what? You weren't going to make any money. I did all the effort to put the design together and the samples and everything. And basically the coach just wanted this stuff to be donated for free. And so they convinced us to donate the shirts for free with the idea that, the shirts, the retail version is going to sell in the bookstore, and actually ended up working out just fine. But one of the two things I want to kind of point out about that scenario is that the graphics determined that whole thing. If we didn't happen to have a really great looking graphic, that conversation would have occurred. And second of all, more importantly, is when you're dealing directly with the coaches in the athletic departments, a lot of times they're looking for handouts. And in today's day and age, a lot of that is driven by sponsorships from the big four. So, if you don't know who the big four are, the big four are going to be Under Armour, Adidas, Nike, and to a lesser degree, Reebok. And these companies with their shoe contracts and their uniform contracts, and now Champion's made a resurgence. They're basically buying up that business. So we're not really going after that business. If you happen to be lucky to be involved in that, good for you. But that's not going to be my target. My target is going to be the independent thinking organizations, booster clubs, anything that doesn't require a purchase order to be placed with the school in any kind of terms. Because if you ever dealt with schools, they say, hey, we're net 30 terms. You're not going to get paid in 30 days. You're going to get paid 60 or 90 days. And they're going to find an excuse not to pay you because you messed up something on the purchase order. You didn't put a hyphen between the number and the B on the purchase order. And they're going to use that as an excuse to not pay you. And if I sound a little jaded over that, it's because I got to experience that firsthand. So you have to counter the competition. You have to be able to get creative. It's all about graphics. You guys hear me, somewhat preach about that, but it is 100% about graphics. If you have cool graphics that people relate to, your odds of being able to succeed in opening up new accounts is going to be much better than, not having cool graphics. And fortunately for you, you're GraphicsFlow members. And so you have access to a lot of pretty terrific graphics, but also a team of graphic designers that's coming up with new things every single month to keep fresh ideas in front of your customers. And like it says in the slide, the company with the best looking graphics is going to win in the marketplace. If all things are considered equal and you have two companies and one company has this really tremendously, talented graphic design team and they're coming up with all this really neat stuff, and the other company is just doing ARC line of text mascot, who's going to win there? I think the company has the better graphics capability. So where it can be kind of challenging is some of these big companies have very sophisticated art departments and graphics teams. And, if you look at kind of what Nike and specifically Nike and Adidas do, it's really impressive. So how do you compete with that? Well, you guys have all the tools to compete with that because you have GraphicsFlow and you have a whole team of people that are at the same level of skill and ability as those people working for Nike and Adidas that are producing graphics for you. So you can tap into that. So in terms of your target markets, youth sports, tremendous amount of enthusiasm around youth sports, booster clubs, any kind of school sports or activities, because there's activities at schools as well. Like my kids were involved in drama in the theater program. And let me tell you, every time they do a play, there's new t-shirts that are going out in there. That particular segment is very creative. Usually the kids come up with an idea and it's up to you to kind of flesh it out. And then we talked a little bit about the leisure sports as well. So when you're, going after this market, I think one of the challenging parts of this is being able to identify the buyers. That's just the challenging part. Who is the actual decision maker? And it's not always who you think it is. And so what's the best way to identify the decision makers? I think your best friend is the internet. I went on to the Saguaro High Schools. They have an actually dedicated website just for the athletic department. It's not the school district website. Or not even, the sub website for Saguaro under the school district's website. They actually have their own athletic department website, and they list out the emails and all the contacts for all the sports. They couldn't really make it any easier for you. And, sending out a quick little email with a few graphics, being able to, reach out and contact those folks as a local business. Hey, we are a local business. We have a full service graphics department, creating a crafty little email and sending that out. And then also, there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and leaving a message. They're not going to pick up the phone live. That might happen 1 out of 100 times, but you can certainly give them a little nudge and say, hey, coach, I just sent you a little email about what we do. If you're not the right person to talk to and you need to put me in touch with the person at the booster club, just let me know and I'm happy to reach out to them as well. So identifying the people that are key decision makers is really your first step. And whether you're using a CRM software or you're using just something as simple as a spreadsheet, starting to collect that data is some of the equity you have in your business. Because at some point you might choose to sell your business and you have an account list and a list of prospects that has value associated with it. So collecting all that data is really, really important. Going to the school office and introducing yourself. There's, if you're trying to deal like local with the middle schools and possibly the elementary schools and high schools, going to the school office and introducing yourself and just kind of cozying up to whoever's in, staffing the office that day, especially in the summer, it's probably going to be a bit of a skeleton crew, and just being honest with them. Say, hey, listen, we're a local business here. We're trying to kind of break into the school market. Here's kind of some examples of what we do. Here's a t-shirt, lay a t-shirt on them with the school name and logo. If you have a vinyl cutter and embroidery capability, easy to do a sample, or if you're doing like DTG or even sublimation, drop off your card attached to a letter. And you can even take it a step further. You could create a little flyer and staple your business card to it and give them 30 flowers and have them stuff them into the little boxes for all the teachers. You can do that. So going in and cozying up to the person in the school office is actually a very effective and low-tech way of doing it. We talked about, picking up the phone and then networking with your friends and acquaintances. That's one of the things I really love about LinkedIn. It's interesting. It was interesting to a podcast. I was listening to a podcast recently and they were talking about, LinkedIn has 3 times as many subscribers as Twitter, or three times as many subscribers, as Facebook, which was kind of shocking to me, but people just don't post that much. But where LinkedIn can be really good is making connections to your friends and families and associates, not your primary connections, but secondary connections. You know this person, but they also know this person. And that also happens in, with your involvement in the community. So if you're going to church and you're kind of chatting with people and maybe somebody asks what you do and you tell them what you do and you're like, hey, listen, you guys have kids involved in schools or sports? Oh yeah, my son's being recruited for D1 football. And said, hey, well, great, let's make up a fun little fanwear shirt for you, and I'll put mom on the back and your son's number on it. And, well, what are you going to charge me for that? I said, nothing. But if you can connect me with the person over at the Booster Club, that would be absolutely awesome. No obligation, but I'd love to help you guys out. But if you can help me make that connection, wow, great. And same thing when you're dealing with your corporate customers, being able to have your corporate customers connect you with the kind of the school team sports people, and the school team sports people helping you connect to corporate and small businesses. A great way to do it. And, like I said before, corporate customer referrals, you get people within a certain age group that have kids, their kids are going to be involved in things that require merchandise at some level. So engage buyers in the creative process. And I can't emphasize this enough. And I know this from my own firsthand experience as a manufacturer's rep in our, working initially through our family business, Desert Sportswear, and then working on my own with my rep agency, is once you get that customer engaged in helping to select and create and model that graphic, they're yours. They are, because they're part of the process and they're emotionally invested in the creative process. And that's just such a smart thing to do. And so one of the best things that can happen to you, maybe get a few graphic ideas over to the customer, and they don't necessarily connect with the graphic, but you say, hey, listen, you're not connecting with that one, but let me send you over a link to our art portal where we've got 7,000 graphics that you can kind of poke around in and give them a few instructions like, hey, don't worry about what it says in the designs. Just find a graphic you connect with visually and I'll work my magic and kind of mock it up for you. People love that level of interactivity. And you notice in all caps, I'm saying here, do not send your clients to the internet to research graphics unless it's your site. Because when you send clients to the internet to research graphics, they also find your competitors. And some of these competitors are big, national companies like, Custom Ink and folks of that nature. And some of them might just be your local company. Because if you do a search for t-shirts, it's going to give you both national people that are utilizing SEO and pay per click advertising, but it's also going to give you the local people there too. And, we don't want to invite competition by having them, go and pick out graphics from the internet. We want to lead them and we want to guide them through that process. And we want to establish ourselves as a creative resource. And, be proactive, get ideas in front of your customers, scoop the competition. And you've all heard me say this before, the time to, secure the order for the state championship shirts is not the morning after the team wins the state championship. It's 2 weeks before, when you're seeing things starting to evolve and you see the possibility exists, and you put together some graphics in advance of that and maybe written a contingency order, and you're set up to start printing at, 10 minutes after the game ends. That's the time to do that. And sample sell. I can't emphasize that enough. And let's break that down to a couple just simple best practices here. Best practice number one, when you're physically producing products, take a video of it coming off the press, take a video of it being packed into the box. You can take stills as well. Videos are already, I think video is going to be more impactful. And it is just so easy to create a little Instagram reel and upload that video right straight from your iPhone or your Android phone to Instagram, lay a little bit of music under it, put a little description in there, hashtag, the correct hashtags, which it's easy to find those just by looking at what other people are doing. And then also making sure you at the people that are the consumers. So if it's at All About Dance, and that's their Instagram handle, put, after you post, put at All About Dance. So they have visibility on that, and then they can amplify that to their user base, and then they can see that you're doing all this cool new stuff. And they're like, hey, you did all our cheer stuff, but you could probably do all this stuff for the dance studio too, right? Whoop, there you go. So that's a best practice. And then a second best practice, make extras. Just make an extra. maybe one or two. Spend the money to make an extra, because that becomes your sample line. And so if you're, physically meeting with a buyer, you can bring those samples and just lay that sample into their hands, and they can really see real tangible results of what we do. And it's one thing to see a thumbnail on a website of a graphic. It's another thing to be holding a t-shirt that has a graphic. And when I was a manufacturer's rep, it's kind of I actually had a rolling rack that was built in El Paso, Texas by a welding shop that had off-road tires on it and was super reinforced, because I would roll in with 3 or 4 sample bags of, no joke, probably 200 t-shirts, sweatshirts, and ball caps on that sample rack. It's crazy. How do you get a ball cap on a sample rack? You have a duffel bag with your ball caps in it, and you basically loop it over your sample rack, or you put it on the little shelf on the bottom of the rack. And so I knew that by engaging clients with the physical sample, whether you have a showroom or you're making sales calls, that was one of the most effective things that I did. And the other part of that is you can replicate that same process with your GraphicsFlow account by taking those photos and uploading them to GraphicsFlow and creating galleries using your art approvals function, and just send out the gallery. What a cool way to interact with your clients, because when you send out an art portal link, they can interact, they can put comments, and you're notified. It's interactive, super cool. So that's kind of the what I wanted to talk about in terms of buyer engagement. And then emulating retail graphic trends. I'll be the first to admit I am a graphic snob. And I can look at a graphic with a fair degree of confidence and tell you that if it's going to sell or not sell in a retail environment. It's a little bit or on a web store. And why do I have the skills and ability to do that? I think part of it just becomes from growing up in the apparel decoration industry, but more so it had to do with seeing what sold and what didn't sell when we were in the college bookstore business, and it really hasn't changed. Simple, clean graphics in the school market, like what you're seeing here on these examples in this slide, that's the kind of stuff that sells. The really complicated, intricate stuff, unless it's kind of niche, like you're doing like a hippie kind of 60s kind of vibe or something like that, typically aren't going to sell as well in that school market. So what people are looking for oftentimes is that simple, clean graphic. And looking at that championship shirt in the bottom right, I'm pretty sure that's our clip art image. So fairly certain about that, one of our hoop and net designs, or something very similar to one of ours. So being able to kind of copy what you're seeing at that big level in terms of like the colleges and the pro sports teams, and bring it down to a level of like a high school or an elementary school or a middle school, that's a big deal, because you know what? That high school, elementary school, or middle school, they want to have merch that's every bit as cool as what they're seeing on the sidelines after the LSU women won the national championship, right? So that is the kind of the name of the game. And people want to wear what they're seeing in the retail stores and in the media. They want to wear what their favorite social media influencer is wearing. I guarantee you, Taylor Swift goes on TV and she's wearing a graphics tee. Everybody on the planet wants that graphics tee. And by the way, if you go to the Eras tour, which my sister won a contest at work, and my mom went to see Taylor Swift on Sunday night at Levi Stadium in Northern California. I believe it's not in San Jose, but in that area, Taylor Swift t-shirts were $75. So there you go. So having, emulating those retail graphics trends is important, because one of the things that the big retailers do, and big companies like Nike and Adidas do, is they do a lot of R&D on the graphics, and they also have graphics out in the field, so they know what's working and what isn't. And so if they hit a graphic trend, they're going to kind of templatize that, and what's maybe working at LSU, something very similar to that, is pop up at the University of Texas, because it's working and they know it's working. So great graphics, are going to connect with the consumer, look familiar to the consumer. We're not asking you to create the next Mona Lisa. We're just trying to create a t-shirt that looks cool, that people relate to, and they want to purchase. Because one of the worst things that can happen to you as an apparel decorator is printing merch that doesn't sell. And I know everyone's had this experience where the brother-in-law or the cousin designed something, you saw it, it's awful. You try to, somehow salvage it, but the buyer's always right, right? and you print it, and you knew it was terrible, and you printed it, doesn't sell. They put it online, doesn't sell, and that's going to be a hindrance to you to be able to sell more merch, because until that merch moves, they're not going to buy anything else. And then you're going to have to convince them to put that on sale. And whose fault is that? It's not your fault, or is it? Partly it is your fault. And here's why I say that is because you didn't take a stand with the customer and say something along these lines. Hey, I know your cousin produced that graphic, but from my experience, graphics like that don't necessarily do well in the marketplace. And we want to make sure that whatever we're producing is going to check through on the website. So let me show you some ideas that are really popular, have been very successful with some other people. If you still want to do the design that your cousin designed, or if it's, one of those, personal dynamic things you don't want to rock the boat, I get it. But let me show you a couple of other ideas. You have a responsibility to do that. And maybe they still order the design designed by the cousin. Well, guess what? It's not your fault anymore, because you warned them in your kind of kind of a passive aggressive way. But you warned them. You said, hey, listen, I don't think that's going to sell. And guess what? When it doesn't sell, it's not your fault. If it does sell, then, you should be the first to apologize, right? So, and then sample sell again, being able to emulate those retail trends and position yourself as a resource to your clients. I honestly can't stress that enough. So customizable stock graphics, this is where you guys win in the marketplace, because you guys have GraphicsFlow, and the majority of you guys are on elite plans that has the stock art customizer. If you're not on an elite plan, you still have the ability to download the live templates in your GraphicsFlow account and go in and make edits and changes to those. And whether you're doing that in Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW. So it doesn't take you very long to customize graphics. And the concept behind that is quite simple. By taking that graphic, putting the school colors, the names, the logos of that organization, school, or activity into that graphic, it becomes very personal, becomes very relatable. It just looks cooler. And that's how you control the sales process. And the best part is that, you don't have a lot of art development costs, because you're not have to create things from scratch. And, the biggest, I think one of the biggest challenges from a graphics point of view in our industry is customers are just conditioned to go online, search for graphics, screen grab them, and send them to you to somehow artificially resuscitate or recreate. And I think we all know that it's very time consuming. There's copyright issues associated with that. And on a small order, that can be some of the least profitable business that you do, because you have all that art time involved in resuscitating that. And I think by leading clients with graphics, and by taking customizable stock graphics and just, Mr. Potato Heading them into something that's localized for your client, that's just such a good business practice. And you're just making it easier for people to buy from you. And that is the name of the game in today's marketplace. With so much of the business shifting to e-commerce, you just have to make it easy for people to buy from you. And specifically, they want to buy on their phone. They want to buy from their tablet. They don't necessarily even want to talk to you. But that's kind of another discussion we're going to have about online stores. And the other thing too is when you're using customizable stock graphics from your GraphicsFlow account, guess what? Those files are production ready, and meaning you can go straight to film for screen printing. You can color them up so that they're color corrected for your sublimation or your direct to garment print, or you're sending them to, say, Supercolor for a direct to film transfer. So you're controlling the production readiness of the file versus a 1.5 by 1.5 inch 72p DPI JPEG that it's not even possible to print. And then also you don't have to worry about copyright issues. And honestly, that's a really big challenge, because the end user, your customer, doesn't care that copyright image is owned by, the Baltimore Orioles, that's their Oriole logo. They don't care. They just want that Oriole logo on their Little League shirt. And guess what? You can't do that. You can't use the Baltimore Orioles logo on a Little League shirt, because you're violating the copyright of the Baltimore Orioles. So where that artwork comes from, because you're licensed to use it through your GraphicsFlow. Then you don't have to worry about those headaches. And question is always that I get asked, and it's really a good question, is like, well, what if the customer insists on that? Well, you have two choices. If the customer insists, then you can have them sign an indemnification, which they're likely not going to want to do. When the indemnification says, hey, I'm telling you, I am guaranteeing that I have the rights to use this artwork, and I'm transferring any liability for copyright over to myself, not you. Will that hold up in court? No, it won't. If you did the printing, you're ultimately liable whether or not you have an indemnification or not, because really the challenge there is who's willing to spend the most amount of money. So you might be in the right you might be on the right side of it legally, but you're probably not on the right side of the NFL financially. So if they choose to, go to court and, make an example out of you, that can be pretty expensive. And I've been involved fortunately, in the prevailing side of some very big and expensive copyright lawsuits. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. You don't ever want to be in a copyright lawsuit. It's just not a lot of fun. And those at $475 an hour for a copyright attorney, let me tell you, those bills rack up pretty quick. So be smart about using copyrighted images. And if you're just not sure where it came from, you can still have the client, you can ask them where they got it. And you can still have the client sign an indemnification because it does give you one layer of protection. And then, if you're using stock graphics, obviously you're reducing your production time. So, man, you can respond quick. So in that example of the state championship shirts, man, you could whip out 3 or 4 state championship designs in probably a half an hour in GraphicsFlow, create a little art approval, get them over to the buyer, and they're like, yep, that's the one I like, number 4, right? So pretty fun way to do it. So moving right along, I want to talk a little bit about direct-to-film and hybrid digital transfers. I don't want to turn this into a Supercolor commercial. I think everybody knows that I'm a big fan of Supercolor, and more importantly, I'm a big fan of the technology. But for those of you that are looking for a solution to do small order quantity, full color, on just about any substrate that can be used to create a wearable item or promotional item, these direct-to-film and hybrid digital transfers just opens up a huge amount of possibilities for you. And, we're doing all of our trade show swag is all done with Supercolor transfers. I'm the official heat presser, so I get to do the heat pressing, which I don't necessarily mind. But we can order small quantities. We wanted to do just a fresh new design for the GPX show that we did just recently in Portland, and I just ordered 20 transfers and enough for our staff, and we had a few left over. We handed out to customers, and it was just easy to do. And so this new technology is really important. And just to kind of clarify, direct-to-film is using a solvent inkjet printer, printing onto the PET film that's printing white last. That white is slightly tacky, so it's not completely cured. It goes through a shaker unit that puts a powdered hot melt adhesive on it. It goes through a curing unit that cures the ink and the adhesive, and then you have transfer you press on. So that's a true direct-to-film transfer. Hybrid digital transfers like Supercolor are different. They're using $500,000 digital offset printers and printing plates to print onto the PET film, and then they have an automated system for screen printing the underbase, so they can vary the chemistry of the underbase, the white part, based on the substrate. So for instance, they have a material that will cover a 6-panel seam on a baseball cap. They have a material with a subliblock that will block any kind of dye from a sublimated shirt from coming through. They have a material that's designed specifically for nylon type materials like this soft shell blocker right here. So being able to vary that chemistry is actually a big deal. So when you're trying to compete, this is where we're headed with this. When you're trying to compete with a local screen printer, they can't touch you on small order quantities. You can go in, Supercolor is a 10-piece minimum. So you can go in with a 10-piece minimum. You have to charge a little bit more because it's a premium decoration process. And with a full color design with 100 colors on it, and you're dealing with competing with the screen printer that has to charge by the color and has to do setup. And on small orders, there's no way. And here's the other thing. I can tell you this right now, having in my personal inventory of t-shirts and probably having, no joke, 75 printed shirts in my inventory right now. I know that's a little bit embarrassing, kind of a hoarding situation, but the Supercolor transfers I have wash like $1 million. They do not crack. They look the same after 100 washings, as they did after the first one. I don't have any with 100 washings, but I guarantee I have some with 25 or 30, and they just look amazing. So I can't say enough good things about the company and the process, whether you're using traditional DTF from some of the other vendors that are offering it or like this hybrid process. But for back to school, it just opens up a whole new world for you. And some of the things that you can do is, here's a really, really cool idea. So I had a client, and he taught me this, and I thought it was really smart. What he would do is he would do screen printed transfers, and he'd do like a 4 or 5 color transfer, and he would do pocket designs for the top 6 or 8 high schools in their area. And he would just order up like, 100 of these transfers. And let's say there's 8 on a sheet, 8 different schools. So he had 800 total transfers, but he only had to order 100 sheets. And he'd cut them up, and then he'd run a Facebook ad and a special on his Facebook page. Pocket tees, $10. $10 pocket tee with your school logo. So he did pocket tees because he could gang up all the transfers, designs onto a single transfer, and he had to be really smart about choosing colors. So, he'd always have gold, would always be a color in there, and then, you'd have black and gold combo and the red and gold. That's how he did it. And then maybe some school would just be a one color. And super successful. He'd run that promotion, then he'd table the promotion, and then he'd come back 2 weeks later and re-up it. And if he had extra transfers left over, he'd run another promotion in the future, or frankly, they could just go in the trash can. Now you can do that with full color transfers because you don't have to even be concerned about having the number of ink colors. You're not screen printing these. You don't even have to think about it. And so you could do full color designs, 8 different designs on a what we call a gang sheet. Each design has 5 or 6 colors in it. I mean, amazing. And you could do gradients and blends and fine line detail. And so super awesome, technique. And the other thing is stocking transfers and printing on demand, which you can do, which is, definitely ties into e-commerce, is, I think is very clever, is you can get a transfer made and you can have the customer pay a deposit for the wholesale cost of the transfer. So you're kind of covered. And then you can just draw against those transfers on a print on demand store. So as the orders come in, maybe you bulk transfer once a week. And this week I had 10 shirts to do. And last week I only had 5. And next week we ran a little Instagram special. And we had 20. I've run down to my last 10 transfers. Let's order another 50. What a cool way to compete with like a traditional screen printer. Because at the end of the day, you know what buyers don't want? Buyers don't want to inventory anything. Nobody wants to inventory anything anymore. And the traditional screen printer is always afraid of that because they're not in a position to do setups on small orders. So if they ran a program like that, they might have to set up to do 13 pieces on a 3-color design. They're maybe not losing money on that, but it's certainly coming out of their bottom line. So doing these, deposits on stocking transfer orders is such a smart way to do it. And you got those little minimums, and you can bank on reorders, especially if you get the graphic right. So just wanted to kind of paint that picture with this new technology, which is the direct to film and Supercolor transfers. And if you want to get set up with Supercolor, it's really easy to get set up. You just go to supercolor.com and you just select get started, and then the little form you fill out to set up your account. You guys are all commercial people, so you just want to check that you're a commercial business. And then in the little drop-down list there, you can pick where you heard about us, and you can pick, I think it says GraphicsFlow and Inksoft. We do that not because there's a revenue share. We do that so we can track where people are coming from, which is invaluable marketing information. So that's what I wanted to kind of say about that topic. And so I want to kind of walk through a typical prospecting campaign with your GraphicsFlow account, but I do want to talk about some principles of this before we do it. And one of the biggest, principles is focus on the graphics, not the product. The product, it's not irrelevant, but it's not primary because we can figure out what we're going to put it on later. And if you look at the apparel decoration marketplace, specifically in the schools, there's 6 main products that are going to probably be 60 to 80% of the market. And that's going to be 100% cotton short sleeve tee, 100% cotton long sleeve tee, poly blend crew neck, poly blend hoodie, 100% poly dry fit t-shirt, 100% poly fit hoodie. Boom, you got 60 to 80% of the market right there. And so you can always, go back and kind of fill in the blanks on that. And then you also want to narrow the scope of your graphics. Choose your top sellers that are proven, things that have worked at other schools. And you can certainly tailor the graphic to the organization with their schools and colors, and maybe tweaking out the design elements here and there, maybe swapping a ribbon out with a shield or something like that. But you don't have to offer a huge amount of graphics. We talked about complicated is not always better. In this market, simple graphics tend to sell better in the sports market. Frankly, your personal taste is irrelevant. If you don't like simple, clean art graphics with collegiate fonts, that's not your groove. We don't care what you feel. We know those work really well in the marketplace. And that's a proven concept that's going to work and might not be your thing, but it's what's working in the marketplace. So, we want to create things that are going to check through and produce sales versus kind of tailoring to your personal taste. Because frankly, we don't know if your taste is any good. Is my taste good? I don't know. Ask my wife. You'd have to interview my wife, but I think I have a pretty good inventory of cool looking t-shirts. And I feel like when I make stuff for myself, get a lot of compliments on it. I'll let you know a little secret. All I'm doing is taking our templates and changing the text and maybe the font. And I'm taking credit for all the creativity, even though I had nothing to do with the designing, zero. And you should be taking credit for that as well. And then one of the kind of the best practices I want to talk about is setting up an online pitch store to showcase your program. And we're going to build one of those so you can see what that looks like. And you know what? The biggest audience, it's the fans, not the players. If you look at, we'll just take a high school basketball team. If you take a high school basketball team, there's going to be 12 to 15 kids on that team. Those 12 to 15 kids are going to have 2 to 4 parents. They're going to have 4 to 8 grandparents. They're going to have cousins and aunts and uncles and friends of the family and all of those people that are supporting, that fan. And it's interesting. I was on Facebook yesterday, and the daughter who I grew up with, of the pastor of the church I went to when I was a kid, their oldest son is attending Air Force Academy on a basketball scholarship, 6'7", and their younger son, who's a senior, just got recruited by the University of Hawaii. That's the #1 men's volleyball program in the country. They won the last 2 national championships. And I was kind of looking on their profile pages for both the athletes, and I was thinking, oh man, a really cool thing to do for them is make up some shirts, because I know their numbers and everything. It'd be a really cool thing to do for Joel and Sue is to make them a shirt, which I might do that, and just with their grandkids' numbers on it. It'd be a really fun thing to do. And you can do that, and you plant those seeds, because you know what? Other parents are going to see that. I'm not trying to sell swag to anybody, but those grandparents are wearing that to a game, and other parents see that, and they're like, "Where did you get that?" "Oh, we got those from Rogers Company, and here's where you can go to find out more information about what they do." So, it's the fans, not the players. And tie up your clients with online stores. And we're going to come back to this slide, because what I'm going to do right now, we're just going to kind of go into GraphicsFlow, and we're going to just break down a really simple method for doing a prospecting campaign. We are just going to keep it super ultra simple. And we're not worried so much about a big scope of this. We're just going to create a cool graphic, and then we're going to build out a store, and we're going to do an article. So first thing I would start with, the customers could certainly go to my art portal and select a graphic for customization and submit a design request. But if I'm going in and, I'm trying to create something and mock something up, I'm probably going to start with the graphic, and here's the new design drop from this month. And then I'm just going to localize this up for the customer. That's all I'm going to do. And so if I want to take this graphic right here, nice, really classic sports graphic, and if I want to customize that, really all I have to do is just click on it, click on customize here. And once I click on customize, James High School, this will become Central High School, because I always use Central High School because it's easy. And we change that to Central High School, and Central High School is the Cougars. And this is a multi-layer text effect. So what we want to do is change the word Cardinals to Cougars twice. There we go. And we're going to leave soccer alone. And then what we're going to do is where it says 20XX, I'm going to change that to CHS right there. So we've got that. I'm going to leave the soccer ball alone because I like the soccer ball, but we are going to change the colors up a little bit. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to select this color right here. And I'm going to change that to more of a red. So we're going to change that to red. Hit apply, and then I'm going to change the black to more of a navy. Hit apply. And there we go. We got it. It's set up. And that color combination right there would actually work really well for It would work well probably for gray, but I want to set this up so it's going to be easier to do a colorways, because if I have the white in the Cougars up here and the red down here, and I try to do a colorways on, say, navy, then I'm not going to have as much flexibility. When I do a colorways, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're going to take this right here, and I'm going to change this to the same red with a fill color right here. I'm going to change it to the same red, so it's a little bit more consistent. And then I'm just going to click on apply. I'm going to save the design. And so I'll just go over here and hit save. I'm going to name it Central Soccer. I'm going to place it in my Central Cougars folder right here. And then I'm going to download 2 versions of the file. So I'm going to download a CorelDRAW version of the file. And this might be the version that I bring into CorelDRAW to do modifications if I want to do it, because this will come in with live text. So we'll do that. And then I'm also going to download a PDF version of the file. And if I'm going to open this up in Illustrator, I would have the ability to do editing. The text won't be live, but I'll have all the vectors. But if I'm going to populate a store with Inksoft, this is the one I want right there. And then I'm going to add this to an art approval. So I'm going to create a new art approval, and we'll call this Central Cougars Soccer 2023. I'm going to create it and add the files here. And then this is how I'm going to bounce it back over to the customer. I'm just going to go over here to my art approval. I'm going to select it. I'm going to change the background color. So I'm going to click on the graphic, and I'm going to change the background color right here. Change the background color. I'm going to change it to fairly dark gray there. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I could put some notes in there if I wanted to. So I could put some notes on, hey, coach, this is the design I came up with for blah, blah, blah. Coach can't comment, all that kind of fun stuff. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this with the customer. So 2 ways I can do that. Way number 1 is by entering the email and using our email system to set it out, but it's going to come from GraphicsFlow. It'll have your logo on it, but it's going to come from GraphicsFlow. The better way of doing it is to use a shareable link and put that into an email. And I'm going to grab a comment link in here, giving them the ability to comment and view this art approval. I'm not giving him approval. No, I'm not going to give him approval at this point. I want to get the graphic kind of narrowed down real quick. So I'm going to grab a commenting link, and while we're in here, let's add a couple more soccer designs here, just to give them a couple other ideas. And I'm just going to type in soccer, and we'll just pick 2 more. I'll pick this one, and this one's kind of fun, kind of retro there. So we'll add those 2. And on these, I'll put a little note in here. I'm going to move this one to the top. So I'm just going to move that in the top. And then I could put background colors on these too if I wanted to, but I'm just going to add a comment in here. Our description says, any of these can be adapted to Central High. Right there. And I'll put a note in here. It's a popular trend with the pixelated digital look and old school video game vibe, which is what that is. So there you go. So I've got the commenting link. For those of you that are on the live, I'm going to pop that into the chat right here. And let's grab that link again. So I'm going to grab the comment and approve, or just the comment link. So you guys are welcome to put comments on that if you're on the live, because you'll have the link. Okay. So there it is. That's in the chat for those of you on the live. So you're welcome to go in and comment. I'll get rained with emails every time you guys submit a comment. And the end user, the customer, could do that as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Inksoft, and I'm just going to add this to a store real quick. So I'm just going to go into my Inksoft, and I'm going to go into, I'm going to make sure I'm logged in. And so I'm going to sign into my Inksoft account. And I've already built out this store right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Style Editor. And I'm going to get rid of this product right here. It's so easy to add and remove sections in a store and change color combinations and logos and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to add a new component. And that new component is just going to be a highlighted product, featured product. We're going to start that from scratch. And I'm going to take that featured product and I'm going to use drag and drop to drop that up underneath the little countdown timer here. And then what I'm going to do is on this particular timer, I'm going to hit edit and I'm going to manage the end date. So this is already expired. So we're going to change the end date to August 31st. So that's when they got to get their orders in. They got 27 days to get their orders in. And then what I'm going to do, we're going to save and publish that. And I'm going to go add a product. So I'm going to come back here in my Inksoft and I'm going to go to my store admin. And I'm just going to add this to a t-shirt. So I'm going to go create new. And I'll just pick this little Gildan 2000 t-shirt. And I'm going to pick it in 2 colors. I'll pick it in ash. And then I'll pick it in navy. And this is partly where Inksoft is really cool because I could pick all 75 colors here and all I could do is match them up with the colorways and it will create all of the virtuals for me. I don't have to go into like Photoshop and take a blank and put a product on it and save a PNG or a JPEG and then do that for every color combination. All I'm going to do is upload that graphic. And remember, we put that in my downloads folder. So it's right here. I'm going to upload it. And the PDF file is going to come in as vector, which is super awesome. And then once we have that vector file set up, then we're going to just change the colorways real quick. So I'm going to come down here. Here's the vector. It's already set up for the ash shirt. So now we're going to kind of set it up for the navy. So I'm just going to say colorways, create a new colorway. And then I think I just need to change the navy to white. I think we're good. If we change the navy, actually, let's change the navy to gray, actually. Let's see how that looks. That probably look pretty good. Yeah, looks great. Hit done. There you go. So that's the colorway for navy. That's the colorway for ash. And let's say the shirt isn't quite, on the photo blank isn't quite, at the right angle. You get the little rotation button here. So if you need to do that, and if you're trying to set up virtual samples in, Photoshop or something like that, you gotta tweak that too. So you can do that right here in Inksoft. And I'm going to save that colorway. So it's saved, and that's saved in the art library for that particular client. So that client actually has access to see all their art. Can't download it, but they can see it. So they can log into their portal. And then I'm going to create the product, and I can, keep it as a Gildan if I wanted to. So I can keep it as a Gildan, but let's say I want to have a little bit more flexibility in the blanks in case, Gildan runs out. We'll get rid of that. And on the SKU, I'm going to put CHS in front of here. So in a report, it's easy to run a report for all those CHS designs. And I'm going to have navy be the default color that everybody sees. And we're going to charge $25 for that. And we're going to hit finish. Manage products. There we go. I'm going to add, yep, looks perfect. I'm just going to add it, plus button, hit done. There you go. And then I'm going to save it and publish it. And then I'm going to grab the link for the store. I'll put it in the chat. So if you guys want to go to the store, you can do that. So there's the store right there. One of the cool things about Inksoft is you can have an unlimited number of domains. So it doesn't have to be an Inksoft domain. If I wanted to actually embed this into Central's website, and it was centralboosters.com, and they have a URL they set up for their online store, I can go into my Inksoft settings and actually direct it to that URL. I don't have to pay extra to do that. I can have it go to whatever domain I want, or an Inksoft domain if I choose to do that. So here's your pitch store. And so what you're going to do with that pitch store is you're going to send the customer this page. This is what you're going to use for your presentation. This is what you're going to use to actually land the customer. And that's such an excellent methodology for A, showing that you're a bigger deal than maybe you really are. B, establishing yourself as a creative resource. So people see that, hey, wow, they really have some graphics capability. And then you just made it super easy for the customer, because all you have to do is say, hey, listen, just give me the green light. We'll work out. I'll tell you what your revenue share is going to be. You guys don't really have to do anything. You don't have to stock any inventory. And then I'll help you to promote it through your Instagram and a bulk email campaign. Boom, you're done. Such a cool way to do it. So I just want to end by kind of talking about some of these best practices on your online store. You're selling convenience. The client doesn't have to deal with money. It's a revenue share. They're just going to collect a check once a month. And you're not having to deal with that old school order form where the kids are, they're losing the order form. They're having to scribble down credit card numbers, which is definitely a security risk. You eliminate any mistakes. People are placing their orders on their phone or their tablet. You're getting tracking and reporting on everything that's going on. So is the customer. The customer can collect metrics. So if we want to retarget and upsell based on what we learn about what colors are selling or what products are selling, and maybe want to add a new color because we noticed that navy crew necks are doing better than the gray, but we didn't have navy t-shirts, so we want to add a navy t-shirt. Customers are going to order more when they have the convenience of ordering online, especially on a phone or a tablet. You can react immediately to market opportunities. So for the example, the championship, boom, you can just add that championship graphic, add it to the store, and you're in business. And best of all, you're getting paid as the orders are being processed instead of waiting for a PO or credit terms or taking 50% up front, waiting 15 days to get the rest. You're getting paid up front. You're not competing on price because it's a revenue share. So the retail price is tied to the revenue share. They're not going, hey, I can get that shirt for $6.50. They're going, hey, we're selling that shirt for $25 and I'm getting 30%, and I don't have to stock anything or take a risk. You can offer more products and you can kind of tailor it to higher profit margins. And frankly, your store becomes your recruitment tool for new clients. It is your showroom. If you're not doing stores, and for lack of a better word, if you're not doing stores, you're missing the boat. It's not the future where our industry is at. It is where our industry is at. And having the capability to do online stores is an absolute game changer in your business. And one of the things that, I think is critically important, people look at, an industry specific platform like Inksoft is the gold standard in our industry versus all the extra work and effort that you have to do with the general e-commerce platform that's not designed for our industry. For instance, having to set up those individual virtual samples, not having access to the customer feeds from all the popular suppliers with real-time pricing and real-time product descriptions. And if there's a new product, it's automatically going to be included in your feed from Sanmar. Having the ability to, adapt your store to, complex pricing models. For instance, if somebody's going to order 6 shirts, it's going to price it based on DTG at a higher price. But if they're ordering 600, it's going to price it as a screen print. So all of these nuanced things that make an industry-specific platform more user-friendly and cost-effective, they really add up over time. And so, I can't say enough good things about setting up online stores, but I know for a fact, if I was setting up online stores and I was having to go out and compete in the marketplace, the first investment I would make would certainly be Inksoft. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today on GraphicsFlow Academy, and we hope to see you on the next class.